Welcome, Whitechapel Online. We are so glad that you joined us this week as we continue looking at what does it look like for us to have this bold hope in God and to walk by faith as we looked at last week. And this week we're giving a look at what does it mean for us to have faith in the midst of our lion's den. And I'm a bit skittish to talk about any type of animals during this talk because I've got animal issues from when I was a kid. See, I got attacked in a very bad way by a massive warrior duck. And so anytime animals were mentioned, I just wasn't a big fan of them. I mean, we didn't have a gerbil, we didn't have a hamster, an aardvark, an antelope. I mean, we didn't have any of these growing up. And so as a child, I just didn't really do the whole animal thing until that recently changed and my family got cats and the cat rang the doorbell on Christmas Eve. It's this whole long story. But basically, I've got animal baggage. And so when we're talking about the idea of a lion, I'm just like, don't really want to go there. But you see, it's a crucial story in our development of faith with God. I don't know what it is, but somewhere along the lines when we're kids, we have this vivid imagination. For me, I thought I was going to be the next Michael Jackson. I would put the glove on and I had the penny loafers and I would moonwalk everywhere I went. I really thought that I could be the next king of pop. When I became a middle school student, I was determined that I was the next Michael Jordan. Despite that I was about 4'7" and couldn't jump, I still decided that I was going to be the guy who was dunking all over people wearing number 23 for the Bulls. See, we have these vivid imaginations as children. You probably had the same thing, whether you wanted to be the president or the next famous person to land on the moon or the next big star in Hollywood. We have these imaginations that have no limit to them. And my worry is that as we grow older, as we age and as we start to embrace the realities of life, we lose that imagination somewhere along the way. This translates to our faith life in that we stop believing God for miracles, that we stop believing that things could be possible. We stop really believing that God could do miraculous things on our behalf. So as we approach the topic of Daniel in this lion's den, we're going to see that God delivered him from the den of lions. And we share something in common in that either we have been, we currently are, or we will be in a lion's den one day where it seems like there's no way out, seems like there's no way escape. And how we respond in the midst of that lion's den is going to prove everything about our faith. And so in Daniel chapter 6, verse 16 through 23, we hear this popular story about Daniel in the lion's den. So the king gave the order, and they brought out Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Wow. So here we see this man of faith, this Daniel who was thrown into this lion's den for his belief in God and his devotion to God. And that the angel of the Lord appeared and kept the lions from even touching him because he trusted in his God. We see that King Darius in this time, he divided this kingdom into 120 countries, each with a mayor. And then there was 3 regional administrators who supervised these 120 mayors. And one of these was Daniel. That Daniel was superior to the others and that he was a man of upright character, that he walked with God and that he was very successful. So you see that his friends and his fellow people were very jealous of him. That as he got this promotion, that people were plotting to see his downfall, plotting to see him not succeed. And so they knew that he was a devout religious man, and so they recommended to King Darius an edict that basically said, whoever prays to another god, they're going to be punished. In fact, if they pray to anyone other than King Darius for the next 30 days, they'll be thrown into the lion's den. And you can see the conflict this had with Daniel because as a devout man of God, he prayed to God 3 times a day in an upstairs room. And so his practices weren't going to change. So you see the scene play out in that Daniel's friends / enemies, they catch him praying and they report it to King Darius. Darius was distressed because he had so much faith and confidence in Daniel, yet he knew how the edict was to play out. And so we see in verse 16 that the king very reluctantly gave Daniel to go into the lion's den. You see this tension when King says to Daniel, "May the God whom you serve rescue you." And so the backstory is that the king was distressed that night, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, didn't even want entertainment. Hoping the next day to see an alive Daniel, he goes and visits this den. And he called out, "Oh, Daniel, has your God been faithful? Has he been able to save you?" And Daniel's answer was, "The God who sent his angels to shut the mouths of the lions saved me." And thus Darius was excited that he whooped with joy, one translation says. And he had Daniel removed from the den. This is so interesting because we don't really see a whole lot of this today, people getting thrown into lions' dens. I mean, if you were thrown into a lion's den and you survived, I'd love to hear the story. I think we'd be able to get some press about that. This is something so out of the norm. But it points to a bigger issue of that if you were placed in that situation, would you believe that God could rescue you from the lion's den? See, somewhere along the way, we've lost our imagination. We've lost this great faith in God, that God can do miracles, that God can deliver us from a lion's den. I guess maybe another question to ask is, do we believe that God can act even when a situation seems over? Or do we believe God for the impossible? I love what Pastor Stephen Furtick said. He said this, "If you're not daring to believe God for the impossible, you're sleeping through some of the best parts of your life." I think that's so true. I mean, when did we stop believing this? Or better yet, why did we stop believing this? I mean, the claims of faith are pretty outrageous if you think about it. I mean, we believe that God created, spoke the world into existence. We believe that salvation, that right relationship with God is now made possible because of the death and resurrection of Jesus. This Jesus that came to live this perfect, sinless life, died on a cross and rose from the dead so that we could be in relationship with God. I mean, we believe in some pretty impossible things, some audacious things. And so really, disregard for the status quo really is the essence of the gospel. I mean, it really describes the radical message of Jesus. And so when did we stop believing God for the impossible? Or maybe another question is, does the type of faith you have, does it line up with the radical stories you read about in our scriptures? Read about these guys that did great things for God, these guys and girls that had such devout faith that it might have cost them their life or they might have risked their life. For many of us, maybe we're just faking faith. The kind of faith in Galatians 2:20 that says, "I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. In this life I live, I now live by faith." And so, where are we in this journey? I mean, do we stop praying bold prayers and radical prayers to God with a lack of faith? Faith really isn't just a fire insurance or a pass to get you out of hell free, but faith is really the most vital building block of our relationship with God. And it's the foundation with which we establish our lives. And so as I read this story, I started to realize that, man, there's a lot of lions out there. We all have our various lion's dens, whether it's financial, relational, physical, emotional, our past, our future. There's all these lion's dens that could possibly attack us. And so do we believe that God can shut the mouths of our lions? You know, Jesus anticipated that we would face these types of lions in our lives. In John 16, he said this, "In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, for I've overcome the world." He assured us that even in the midst of these times that his grace was sufficient. It was enough for us. The toughest lion that we have to face is the enemy. In 1 Peter, we see that we're to be controlled and alert, that our enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But luckily, Jesus had a dominant lion in mind. When in Revelation we see the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. So regardless of what your lions are, our lion is bigger than your lion. It's kind of like when you used to say, well, my dad can beat up your dad. And we all had these super dads in mind, is that in the midst of these lions' dens, Jesus, the Lion of Judah, has triumphed over Israel. And so we see the result of Daniel's faith is that the whole nation is praising this God of Daniel who rescued him from the lion's den. Down we also see that they said, this God that rescued Daniel, he is worthy to be praised. And so there's some thoughts that I want to share with you, a couple of statements about what does it mean for us to have this faith in the midst of a lion's den. The message of Daniel basically says, it's not over. Or better yet, God always comes through. Or one that I really like is this, God can shut the mouths of the lions. And maybe even more at home, God can turn a mess into a miracle. You see, how we respond in the lion's den can really drastically tell us how our faith is. And the world around us sees this. So as I close, I was thinking, what was Daniel doing that whole night? These lions are surrounded him and looking right at him, and he's about to be lion bait. You know what I think Daniel was doing? I think he was worshiping. I can picture him singing a song to God, looking at these lions going, our God is greater, our God is stronger, our God is higher than any other, than any lion, than anything you can throw our way. So may we go from this place, trusting God in the midst of the lion's den, knowing that our God can shut the mouths of the lions.